Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Authentic Uprising podcast. I'm your host, Jill Simons, and I'm so excited to grow in the radical art of standing in what God says about you with you today. The show is a place where we pour into the sense of who God is, who we are, and how we can live more in the freedom that He has for us every single day. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Authentic Uprising podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jill Simons, and I have a wonderful guest here with me today who is no stranger to being bold and taking risks with her faith. She currently serves as a focus missionary on a college campus, and that, if you're unfamiliar with the program, that really involves stepping out into some of the most hostile environments to the faith and sharing boldly about who the Lord is and what He does in her life and what He has for all of the college students there that she ministers to. So Mariana Pimiento is currently stationed in the upper Northeast, and I am so happy that you are here with me to chat today.
Thanks so much, Jill. It's such a pleasure to be here and to get to talk about one of the most exciting things in my life.
Awesome. So share with us a little bit about kind of what shaped you into the kind of person who would do something that might seem crazy to so many people.
Sure. My family and I immigrated to the US when I was 7. So I'm no stranger to kind of bringing a little bit of a different message to a crowd because we brought a culture that really hadn't been seen in my southern town. It was a lovely town, but hardly anyone that hadn't grown up there. And that made me really want to, from the get-go, sort of bring the good news of my culture. So I've been bringing this kind of good news of something that has changed my life since I was a little kid. Now, maybe I didn't do it in the best way. I was a little bit of a punk about it most days. But I've had this deep experience being an immigrant. I've experienced something really good, and I want to share it with you. And I want you to experience it. And yeah, that kind of ferocity of, man, I have something really good to share, made me want to move to New York City for college. I loved how many fantastic cultures there were there. I wanted to be this famous photographer, but to bring a good news of beauty in that sense to the world of authentic beauty. At that point, I hadn't quite encountered the Lord yet in a deep and meaningful way. But yes, I've always been this kind of spicy, different, willing to push the line, but to do so with great tenderness. That led me to somehow being a missionary. So it's funny how the Lord writes little pieces of our hearts since we're little.
That is so true. That is so true. And I know that is true for so many people, where I just had a conversation with someone yesterday who was just like, it's so crazy because I could not have even made up what I am doing right now. But literally every single circumstance and thing in my life like prepared me to do this. And that really is beautiful. Where did your family emigrate from?
We came from Colombia.
Okay.
Yes. So we moved quite suddenly. It was a little bit sad, just because of the war and the violence, but the Lord had a better path for our family here. But it's a beautiful place. Again, preaching the good news of Colombia. For those of you who have seen Encanto on Disney, that's where I'm from. So Disney's doing a great job for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, that is. Like, I was reading about how Lin-Manuel Miranda went and lived in Colombia for a number of months. I can't remember the exact timeline, to really learn the music of the culture and things like that. And I just love that got to show through, because that has, my family, having no experience of Colombian culture, has just been so positively affected by that in the many, many viewings of Encanto that have happened at my house. I love that. So when you reached New York City, and you said you went to college there, correct?
I did.
So in college in New York City, this is where you really encountered the Lord, correct?
Yes. Mhm.
And so how did that story unfold?
It was a beautiful sort of dance of the unraveling of what I'd already learned as a child. The church was really my home when we got here. So the one thing we had in common with other people was our Catholic faith. And thank goodness my parents, devout Catholics, would pull me out of bed even if I didn't want to go on a Sunday. And so I was really involved. I taught First Communion. I mean, I was like the star child of my parish, but it really came on whims, my faith, and really felt the Lord near when we had praise and worship, and things like that. But I never really allowed Him to transform my heart, and uh, that really came to the light when I moved to New York City. I was still trying to be faithful. I was working full time, so I still try to go to Sunday Mass when I could, which was every Sunday. But at the same time, I was wrestling because I chose to go to a Protestant school, which ended up being a tremendous grace because it was my friends who were Protestant who led me closer to the Lord through St. Augustine, many of who Anglicans like revere as a great doctor of the church as well. Um, but yeah, it was kind of this, oh no, I don't have what I experienced before, which was this great close-knit Catholic community. Now I can kind of sleep in on a Sunday, sleep in the next. And before I knew it, I hadn't gone to Mass in 6 months, and I was lying to my parents about it, which was when I knew that I was in big trouble. And um, that was really challenging for me to not recognize myself in that way. Again, thankfully, I had such tremendous friends that walked with me, and that yeah, they weren't Catholic, but they wanted to walk with me in encountering the Lord and in being in Bible study. So I really hit rock bottom, you could say, my sophomore year, my second semester. We had quite something tragic happening on our campus. Our school is only 500 people, so it was a great tragedy, and it hit us very deeply. And I wasn't in the faith. My dad had just been diagnosed with cancer. I was struggling with depression and anxiety. I mean, completely burned out, working 40, 45 hours a week. I could keep going. And I just, yeah, I hit rock bottom. And I had to ask myself, is this all real? Is it real? Like, either God is real, and if He's not, okay, if He is, where is He? Is He in the Muslim faith? Is He in the Christian faith? I need to find Him. And so I began a really painful journey that was really just myself and the Holy Spirit, of who is He and who am I? And what does He have to do with my life? Because I can't follow this distant God who I just go to church for on a Sunday. It had to become really personal at that point.
That's so beautiful. And I think that is such a valuable experience to share about, because I think that there's a lot of people that find so much good fruit from spending time in the faith with people whose kind of default view of the faith is slightly different than their own. And that's part of the reason that I am personally so passionate about ecumenism, is because on these biblical topics, on these topics of who we are and who the Lord is and what He says about us and all of these things, these are the same for all Christians. And it's really a tragedy if we don't come together around these things, because same thing, it has been people of different traditions than me that have spoken so much life into these places. And so I just really love that was manifest in your story. That was very much my own. I learned the Bible very exhaustively from resources from a different faith tradition when I was a child. And I'm so, so thankful for, and wouldn't change a thing about all of that I was able to receive from them. And so as you were going on this journey, it sounds like you were really going through a period of this discernment of really, where is the Lord present? And so what did it look like when you found Him? What did it look like when you really had that encounter with the Lord that kickstarted the faith that really sustains your daily life now?
It was a bit of an awkward encounter because my friend had invited me to go watch her sing at her church. She's a friend from back home. She grew up Catholic, and I was like, well, I'll go watch you sing. Great, I have time. And it ended up being a Catholic church run by Dominican friars. And I step into this church, and it's the first time that I've ever felt like a stranger in a Catholic church. And it broke my heart. I knew something was very wrong at that point, that I'd really left what shaped me and what formed my family and what I really found to be home. And I remember one of the friars, I don't even know him personally, but his name's Father James Cuddy. He was the first friar I ever witnessed preach. And I could tell this man lived what he preached. There was this sort of moral authority to him that made me uncomfortable. I was like, oh, you're actually holy. And I'm attracted to it. And then it actually makes me see how unholy I am. And so it was this weird kind of push and pull. And almost in a sense, when you watch a train wreck and you're like, I can't stop watching, kind of, but the opposite of that. It was so good that I wanted to stop watching. And that really stirred something in my heart. And thank God I had the time to go to Sunday Mass at that point in my life. I had a job that enabled it. And I started going just one Sunday at a time, and ended up progressing much quicker than that, just being completely entrenched by the preaching of, again, these friars who their joy was so palpable. And if joy is a fruit of the Holy Spirit, then people are able to see that and to experience that even from a pew and on a pulpit. And particularly for me, the Eucharist, I had to ask myself the really hard question of, if it's true that Christ is present here, then I need to not leave this church. And if he's not present here, then I need to run the other direction, because the consequences are severe. But thankfully, the Dominican friars really showed me what it's like to be a witness rather than just a teacher, which are two very different things.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That is, and it is really, it is such a palpable experience to encounter someone's holiness. And I think that that's one of the most convicting elements of Christianity, really, is when, it makes, of all things, it makes me think of the country song that's out right now, called Craig, and it's about like a youth pastor in a Protestant church. And it's just, one of the lines is, he can't walk on water, paraphrase, but he might be tight with the person that does. And now I have this opportunity to really experience the Lord through these people that know him intimately. So I just love that. So this kickstarted your journey then, that then led you into becoming a missionary. How did that all come about?
Yeah, I chose to give my life to the Lord that Easter. That Holy Week of my sophomore year was really special for me. I kind of remember joking with myself that I wasn't being confirmed on the altar. So for those who decide to enter the Catholic faith fully, they are confirmed on the Easter Vigil. And it was so tangible for me. I was like, I'm not up there, but I might as well be. Like, this is that radical of a transformation. And I knew that my daily life had to change. Fast forward a couple months, by this point, the only Catholic person in my life per se was this Catholic priest that did podcasts. I knew nothing about him other than he lived in Minnesota. Many of you might know him as Father Mike Schmitz. And so he really kind of discipled me in a really funny way every week with his homilies. And when I came back to school in September, I was deeply entrenched in his preaching, in the teaching of theology of the body, which had just completely won my heart over and healed so much shame and sin that I had been wrestling with during that whole time. And Father Mike gave this beautiful homily of, think of the person you want to be in 5 years. What can you do today to be that person, to get you a little bit closer? And that day I could go to daily Mass. And so I began to wake up every day during that time and thinking, what can I do today? And I knew I could go to daily Mass twice a week nearby. And it just so happens a couple of weeks after that, I came in very ridden in shame. That was a big part of my story, was just a lot of shame. And I begged the Lord for a miracle. I received the Eucharist and I said, I'm not going to walk out of this church before you give me some sort of miracle. I will demand it of you. It was a little bit bold. And that day, just as soon as I walked out of the chapel, I wasn't even outside the building yet. So technically I was still in the building. I met one of the missionaries, and they invited me to the Catholic Center at NYU, where there were some Dominican sisters there that night. And the same thing happened of, I don't know what you have, but I want it. Like, I'm so tired of pretending to be someone I'm not. And I'm so tired of being broken. but you are actually living in the fullness of who you're created to be. And I want that. And so the missionaries really took me in and started walking with me very deeply. And I mean, it was only like a month before I was like, this is what I want to do. I just want to spend all my time with you, Lord. And the most obvious avenue for that is to be a missionary. And so it happened very fast. Looking back, it felt like 6 months, or it looks, very quickly. But in the moment, it was just kind of like, it felt so slow in the most beautiful way possible. But again, really seeing that witness, they didn't teach me anything that night, it was just seeing this witness of who they were and what their commitment to prayer, to the sacraments in a daily hidden way that would spark this curiosity in a stranger, that would lead her then to be a missionary. And not only that, but just to live a life transformed by Christ and to be more of who I was created to be.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. A couple of things in that story, but especially the boldness in asking the Lord to show you something, to give you what you needed in that moment. And that's something that I talk about so frequently as well, is really this importance of testing your faith, not in terms of like, I don't like the word test, a lot more of like putting your weight on your faith and allowing the Lord to show you that this boat will float, that you can trust what you're standing on. And that's part of the parable. Well, and I guess this verse isn't necessarily a parable when the Lord is talking about the mustard seed. You could have faith the size of a mustard seed and say to this mountain, get up and move. And the takeaway, I'll never forget, someone pointed this out once in a preaching that I was listening to, that how many of us with faith the size of the mustard seed would never in a million years say, mountain, get up and move. Like, it is about what you do with the faith that you have. And so that moment of you telling the Lord, this is what I'm needing from you to move forward right now. I think that a lot of us are afraid of that because it feels presumptuous, or it feels like we're demanding something of God, which isn't necessarily our place to do. But I love thinking about that in terms of the fullness of our understanding of what our relationship is to God as children. You have a child that comes to you and it's like, I need this right now. What kind of parent is like, how dare you need something from me, demand that of me? That is the kind of thing that is a gift to a parent, to really know concretely, not that the Lord doesn't know without it, but to have the child in vulnerability come to the parent and say, this is really what I need from you right now. I know as a parent myself, that is so meaningful for me with my own children, especially as they get older and their needs get much more complicated. There's a lot it's not just diaper change or bottle anymore that they might need. There's a much wider range of things. The gift of that clarity of them coming to me with their need is just very, very gratifying as a parent. And again, just that witness of who you are in relationship with Christ, that you received from those other people. And I think that that's a beautiful place to start the conversation, specifically about people who don't feel like they have what it takes to be bold or to share their faith openly. I think so often it comes down to, who are you when you are being yourself around other people, wouldn't you say?
Mm-hmm. Amen. There's a great quote by Pope Paul VI that says something along the lines of, modern man no longer listens to teachers. If he does listen to teachers, it's because they are witnesses. And I know that to be true in my own life. How many times we're like, oh, they're a teacher, but they're not walking the walk, or we're really put off by the opposite. And we should be, because we should not be listening to teachers. There are not witnesses. And how do we become witnesses? Well, the Lord has to witness to us first. Here's who I am. And so our hearts have to be transformed, again, in those little moments of fidelity that you might not see as super important, of 20 minutes of silent prayer in the morning, or you're a mom, I don't know how much time you have of just stopping when you're holding your baby. I imagine Our Lady so much with Christ just crying, and those moments of intimacy between her and the Father, of, this is your child, like, I need you to help me in this moment because I have nothing. Those moments of fidelity there to letting the Lord be a witness in your life to who he is will give you all the strength to be a witness to someone else, because it's very hard to teach about someone or to talk about someone if you don't know them. And people can smell that. And thank goodness they can. I think in the past, maybe would have just taken it and not really, okay, they might believe it, they might not, but I'll just take it as truth. Thank goodness we actually don't live in that anymore, because we have to have authentic witnesses. And that's the thing is, not really great teachers. We have those. And with modern media, man, do we have the resources of, Dr. Scott Hahn, do you want to watch this video together on Dr. Hahn, about this very complicated teaching that I have no idea about. I experience that all the time on mission. I don't have the things to teach them on certain complex theological things, but I have my witness. And so they're able to trust me, my students. Hey, do you want to watch this video together? Do you want to read this book together? Because they trust that the Lord has done something in my life. And they can therefore learn from someone else. But yeah, the fidelity of who you are, we just celebrated the feast of St. Catherine of Siena, and she has this great quote: be who you're created to be and you will set the world on fire. Yeah. And that's kind of the journey, is who was I created to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that age group that you're working with specifically is just an age group that can smell on inauthentic people like that. And I think that that's why so many of them in high school and college enter into this really questioning journey, because if they haven't had an authentic witness from someone of, this is what it looks like to be in relationship with Christ, then they really, like you said, rightly so, start questioning, like, why do I want to be in relationship with this guy? Because I'm not seeing the witness of what it does to people to be in relationship with him. My husband teaches high school, so this is very much like the same thing we deal with on a regular basis, me much less so than him. But just that, they can smell fear and inauthenticity and things like that. And that's part of what my husband gets away with, is that he just really is very focused on, he doesn't care what they think. He cares what the Lord thinks. And because of that, he has other teachers that come to him and say, I want to better my relationship with my students. And really they come at it from, I want to get these students to like me. And I want that to be kind of the goal. And I think so many of us do this in our lives. Like, we want these other people to like us. We want, maybe people that are, the secular colleagues we have at work, the secular classmates we have, we just want to be likable to them. And so a lot of times that leads to compromises when we're kind of eyes fixed on them, maybe with good intentions, maybe we'll want to reach them for the Lord, etc. But really, that primacy of eyes fixed on the Lord, that's going to set things right, so that there's that attractiveness to these other people, because we don't get to control anything but our openness to receive from the Lord.
Amen. And there's a real, I think, tenderness to, let's just say someone, I have such respect for the lay people just in the workplace, working an accounting job at a big firm that's secular. I could never do that. Like, I have to have it be my job, be a missionary, to remember Christ every day. Like, I don't have the strength to be in a secular workplace. So if anyone's listening that's out there in the corporate world, or I just want to let you know how much of a gift you are to the world, and that our church calls you the yeast of society. And that the Lord really cares for those tender hearts in our places of, Lord, I am afraid to share something, that he's not rushing us to share at a pace that we're not comfortable with. And that he's not this, taskmaster, you must share the Catholic faith, but that he really cares for that tender part of, okay, hey, let's talk about why you're scared. Like, maybe I have some experience where I have shared the faith and I have been rejected. So why on earth would I want to do it again? I have been vulnerable and have been cast out. And those places are so tender to him, but we have to bring them to him, which is actually the hardest part sometimes than actually sharing the gospel, is bringing those parts to him. But we have this thing in mission that eternity is worth the awkward. And so when there's awkward moments, maybe it's just introducing yourself to someone, like, let alone bringing gospel or inviting someone to, hey, I have a small group. Eternity is worth the awkward. C.S. Lewis has this great quote, you've never met a mere mortal. Everyone you meet has an eternal destiny. And if we've experienced the goodness of, oh, I have this great dad who created me and cares for me and has this abundant life to give me, this little bit of awkwardness in pursuit, or a lot of awkwardness, is worth their eternal happiness. They don't know it yet, and that's kind of the hardest part of it, is showing them that you actually want this. But it's worth the awkward, and I'm grateful for the awkwardness of the missionary who walked up to me, after mass, who said something to invite me to dinner, or the awkwardness of my Protestant brothers and sisters who would walk with me even though I was Catholic and they didn't agree with a lot of things that I was walking in that faith, in that part of my faith. But yeah, that the eternity is worth the awkward, and that the Lord cares for that awkwardness. He's very tender. He's not mean. He's not angry, and he just wants to show you his love in that moment, because he will give you his heart, and it's the greatest gift. I can't, as a missionary for 2 years, to be able to love with his heart in those awkward moments. I mean, it's breathtaking. It's like, oh, it's real. This is all actually real. And conversion within ourselves and with other people is so beautiful to get a front seat to, when we step into the awkwardness of it sometimes.
I love that phrase. I'm going to adopt that as a catchphrase of my own. Cause I pray for healing for people a lot of times, and same thing, where there's really this pervasive idea that, it's just kind of one of those like in the water cultural things, that it's not kind to get people's hopes up if the Lord isn't going to heal them today when you pray for them. And, that is the kind of thing that, it's scary to take those risks sometimes, but not that not that their soul depends on their healing, but sometimes that, my yes to those situations is when the Lord wants to powerfully work in someone's lives in a way that allows them to encounter him. And same thing, those yeses are just worth everything, the awkwardness I feel, to allow the Lord the opportunity to be made present in that physical way, and present in power in that specific situation, to come and heal, as we know what he loves to do. So I resonate with that a lot. In your time at the schools you've served at, have there been times where you have shared and been rejected and had to take that rejection to the Lord to kind of minister to? And I ask that specifically because I think that that's the big fear, is that kind of what happens after I fall, or after I feel like I have fallen short because this was not received. What I gave was not received, and sort of where is the Lord in that situation?
For sure, I've experienced it on campus. I've experienced it with my own family, experienced it with friends. It's very difficult. Your heart breaks because you have this like $1 million check to someone who's on the street with their name on it, and you're like, but just take it. I promise you can cash this in. And actually, the money never ends. And there's this real heartbreak for that person. I think, yeah, sometimes there's a little bit of pride involved of, woof, like that. Man, I have to realize how poor I am. And maybe I misdelivered something, or maybe I rushed something, and to be really cautious of that as well, as I'm still very young, so still learning so much. But there is a severe disappointment there. Blessed are those who mourn, that we will receive comfort in, and that the Lord has, in his wildest plans and dreams, has used this moment maybe to plant a seed that they won't actually look back on until 15 years from now. So maybe, yeah, a student rejected me now, and I'm leaving my campus, and oh my goodness, I didn't do anything. But maybe in 10 years, someone will say something that will water that little baby seed that I planted. And then it will bear fruit. But it's certainly challenging, and to really take account of what hurt here. And Lord, will you please do something about it? I think of often, I love the story of Lazarus. It was his sister's faith that raised him. And so often how many times we've been offered those opportunities to have faith in moments of death. We won't see maybe our brother or sister rising like Martha and Mary did, but the Lord is asking us of tremendous faith of, okay, this is your plan. This is not how I hope to get to to the land of milk and honey like the Israelites, but you have a way. And I trust that you're doing something even greater here. But it's certainly challenging. I mean, don't we just all want, even ourselves, don't we want all of our hearts to be transformed, as well as the ones that we see that are just most aching for it? There's also funny moments where you're just like, oh, I definitely should have never said that, or like, whoa, I definitely pushed the line, and like recalibrating. Okay, Holy Spirit, how did we go wrong on this one? And taking it all in is, well, that was a part of your plan somehow, in some ridiculous, crazy, humorous way. That was a part of his plan.
And that he really will be faithful to that promise to work all things together for good, even our foibles that are,
oh yeah,
less than glamorous, that we would like to put that back in my mouth. Happens to all of us. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Mariana, for your time today. It's been such a joy to talk to you.
Thanks so much for having me. It's such a joy to get to witness what you're doing. And again, for anyone listening, just to know that you're the yeast of society, that we need you desperately in your own little mission that you have to bring the beating and living heart of Christ to those around us. So I really look up to all of you. Truly know of my praise for you.
Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the Authentic Uprising podcast. It is always a joy to be with you. I encourage you to subscribe to our podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel, whichever place you most prefer, or do it all if that is what floats your boat. We would love to continue to get to know you better and grow in relationship with you. And so I encourage you to check out the links in both our show notes and our YouTube description that tell you more about where you can connect with us elsewhere. The two big things we have going on besides the podcast is our shop that is full of reminders of who you are in God, helping you to really grow in that radical art of standing in who you are and giving gifts that help others to do the same. The other big thing we have going on is the Uprising Academy. This is all of our formation programs, workshops, retreats. Everything is available virtually and on demand, where you can sign up and continue to learn more about radically standing in what God says about you, especially if you are in a place in your life where you are not being fed the way that you long to be fed. Whether it's in your community, whether it's at your church, whatever it is, there is more for you, and we can absolutely walk with you into it through the Uprising Academy. All those links are in our show notes, and if you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to leave a review. Reviews are the number one way that we help get in front of new faces, new people that are able to be touched by the radical art of standing in what God says about us. I love you. I'm praying for you. I hope you have an amazing week.